Hey, foodies and fraud detectives! Ready to uncover some jaw dropping truths lurking in your kitchen? Buckle up, because today we're diving into the wild world of food fraud. So you think this is olive oil, right? Wrong. Well, maybe some of it is, but this is actually a classic example of food fraud. Yep, extra virgin olive oils are being swapped out with cheap knockoffs and sold as the real deal. But wait, there's more. Why is this fish being mislabeled? And your Parmesan cheese products? They might not contain any actual Parmesan cheese. No brand is completely safe from this trickery. Feeling bamboozled yet? I guarantee you, anytime a product can be passed off as something more expensive, it will be. It's that simple. Counterfeits, dilution, substitution, and mislabeling. Food fraud not only harms your wallet, but also puts your health and safety at risk. Curious to know more? Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a tasty truth bomb. Let's get started. We might not know the overall impact of food fraud because so much of what fraudsters do is hidden from us and has been for centuries. Some estimates say food fraud affects at least 1% of the global food industry, costing up to $40 billion a year according to the FDA. The Grocery Manufacturers Association estimates that 10% of the commercially available food in the United States is adulterated. That's 1 in 10. It means if you're not on that 8-item or less checkout line, you've got something in your cart that's probably bogus. According to the FDA, food fraud is considered economically motivated adulteration, or EMA. It's a monetary impact on consumers and food manufacturers. But it's also a potential public safety issue. It robs us of nutrients and can even be deadly. The worst offenders include seafood, meat, dairy, honey, alcohol, and spices. The fraud happens more with more expensive foods. Totally makes sense, right? Higher margin. Take your extra virgin olive oil as an example. Fraud usually occurs when a cheaper oil is added to the more expensive one, but the label still reads 100% extra virgin olive oil. That's food fraud. Olive oil has been adulterated for thousands of years because it's highly valuable and sought after. Fraudsters might flavor it with beta-carotene and color it with a little chlorophyll to make it greener, so you get a lower quality, cheaper oil. Both of these olive oils I got at the grocery store are store brands, but one cost way more than the other. This one had a label of 100% Mediterranean blend of extra virgin olive oil, sourced from various European countries, packed in Italy, with no expiration date. The other one is 100% California extra virgin olive oil, first pressed, cold pressed, unfiltered, no artificial colors, preservatives, or flavors, with an expiration date. It's more expensive, roughly twice as much, but has way more information about where it came from. Now let's look at the spice market. Think of an expensive spice like saffron. This tiny amount cost me $20. Saffron can be bulked up with other materials like plant stems and sold as pure saffron. Popular spices like basil and chili powder from different brands, anything orange, brown, and ground up, can be passed off as turmeric, the ultimate bait and switch. And then there's fish. The FDA says seafood fraud occurs when a less expensive species of fish is substituted for a more expensive one. After all, it's hard to know what fish you're buying, right? Unless you're an experienced chef or fishmonger, you can't tell if a fillet is red snapper. Most of the fish we eat is whitefish. Every fillet looks pretty much the same, which is why there's so much substitution. The FDA is mandated by law to inspect just 2% of imported seafood, an incredibly low bar. First, it's important to understand the matrix that food fraud lives in. There are intentional and unintentional types of food risks. Unintentional risks include food safety and quality, like accidental foodborne illnesses. The CDC estimates about 50 million people a year contract a foodborne illness. Only 20%, 1 in 5 of those, can be identified. So there are 40 million people a year getting sick from something they ate that we don't know what it is. A good guess is that fraud has something to do with it. Then there's intentional fraud, motivated by economic gain, and defense, motivated by harm. If you have a ton of coffee and can turn it into 1.2 tons by adding some cheaper filler, You've just increased your profits by 20%. These products pass through many hands, from small growers to big trucks, tankers, boats, and processing plants. It's not necessarily the big company selling you coffee that's ripping you off. It can happen at any point along the supply chain. Even the FDA says it can't estimate how often this fraud happens or its economic impact. Over the last 10 years, the most common frauds committed are lying about an animal's origin and dilution or substitution, both ranking at 16% of incidents recorded. Dilution and substitution are exactly what they sound like. Perhaps somewhere along the supply chain, the real expensive process of refining something like fresh olives is ignored, and maybe a little canola oil is added instead. There's also the removal of value when an ingredient or part of a food is intentionally left out, taken out, or substituted altogether. And that substitute can be a non-food substance. 14% of recorded food fraud incidents involve using non-food substances. The pandemic has given us a chance to focus on supply chains and forced us to. For example, during the pandemic, labeling fraud really spiked in 2021, making up 21% of the types of fraud committed and recorded. If we knew all about it, why hasn't it been solved? The key is we weren't focusing on prevention. Food fraud prevention, if done right, is boring. We're the fire marshal checking exits and smoke alarms, not catching the bad guys. The U.S. has laws to ensure food safety, and that's part of what the FDA does today. Basically, all food fraud, all product fraud, is illegal under one law or another. Before the FDA existed, manufacturers could add basically whatever they wanted into food. Think of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, published in 1906. That same year, food safety regulation began with the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drugs Act, which outlawed adulterated and misbranded food items to protect consumers, leading to the creation of the FDA. The Food Safety Modernization Act, signed into law in 2011, further improved food safety protocols. But let's talk about horse meat. Fraud on a grand scale. Horse meat was blended into beef in the UK and across Europe, sold to unsuspecting supermarkets for 8 months in 2012 before the scandal was exposed. Some companies purposely mislead on labels. Prosecuting the fraudsters can be tricky since they're purposely avoiding detection. But criminals do get caught. In 2016, product labeled as Market Pantry 100% Parmesan contained cheaper Swiss and cheddar cheese and an organic filler called cellulose derived from wood pulp. Castle Cheese was caught adding wood pulp and cheddar to its grated Parmesan, sold as 100% Parmesan. The FDA allows fillers like cellulose in cheese, but it can only make up 4% of the total ingredients. The president of the company got a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, and 3 years of probation. For its part, the FDA's job is to ensure food doesn't hurt you, not to police the labels. Fraud is tough for consumers because it's difficult to detect without a lab in your kitchen. The Food Fraud Prevention Think Tank has a 5-question survey consumers can use when shopping for food. 1. What type of product is it? Be aware of products you put on, in, or plug into the wall. 2. Quality. Can you recognize the difference between products? If not, you're more vulnerable to fraud. 3. Supplier. Do you know and trust the retailer or supplier? 4. Buying online. The supply chain can be shrouded in more mystery online. Is the website reputable? 5. Complain. If the retailer is legit, they will want to know if there's a problem. Manufacturers can be victims too. The FDA also relies on consumer reports. Fraudsters have become more sophisticated, using better techniques to fake food products, so our detection methods and standards must improve. The U.S. Pharmacopoeia Convention provides a framework for organizations to detect vulnerabilities. They offer food fraud mitigation guidance, a supply chain risk management tool to identify risky products. It might feel like food fraud isn't a big deal, but the more fraudsters succeed, the more we pay as consumers. These cases rarely result in criminal penalties. If you import heroin and get caught, you go to jail. But if you make $80 million importing adulterated honey and get a slap on the wrist and fines, why not choose food fraud over drugs? As long as we don't take it seriously, why should the perpetrators? What we want is the food industry to focus on making food, not worrying about looking over their shoulders. This would lead to more food production, better and safer food, and less expensive food. We have plenty to worry about in the world today. Food fraud shouldn't be one of those things. We've journeyed through the hidden world of food fraud, uncovering the shocking truths behind some of our everyday groceries. From olive oil scams to mislabeled fish, it's clear that food fraud is more than just an inconvenience. It's a serious issue that affects our health, safety, and wallets. Knowledge is power. By staying informed and vigilant, we can protect ourselves and make better choices at the grocery store. Always read labels carefully, trust reputable brands, and don't hesitate to ask questions about where your food comes from. What can you do next? 1. Stay educated. Keep learning about food fraud and share what you know with friends and family. 2. Report suspicious products. If you think you've encountered food fraud, report it to the FDA or your local food safety authority. 3. Support honest producers. Buy from trusted sources and support brands committed to transparency and quality. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more eye-opening content. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we post new videos. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep those kitchen cabinets fraud-free. Until next time, happy eating!